would like to welcome you to our work meeting. It is Thursday, May 7th, 2026. We would like to excuse Councilmember Fowers that has another obligation tonight. We are going to start off because we have Deputy Arbogast with us. So we're going to start off with him. You're probably aware if you've been on, well, we've actually received a couple of emails sent to us. If you've been on social media, we're having a problem with some motorcycles, e-bikes. Probably aware if you've been on, and we have a new law that came out yesterday. So I thought, will you just explain that to us a little, and then maybe give us something of what we can in the city, what we can do and what we can't do, because I've let our residents know we are aware of this problem. And so anyway, so we appreciate you being here with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be honest with you, the law was posted to the legislature's website yesterday. So it's like swimming through mud trying to understand all of it. Because they've got 5 different sections on 5 different things, and each of them coincide a little bit, and they weave in and out. I will say, in my own experience enforcing the law and traffic out here, because traffic's all I do, Hooper does have a traffic problem with electric motorcycles, regular dirt bikes, and anything that has wheels on it essentially is a problem here. So there are different classifications for what an e-bike is, or an electronic motorcycle. A bunch of different rules on helmets and different things. So now everything, if it's got 2 wheels on it, pretty much you're wearing a helmet. Depending on what type it is, will depend on whether you have to have like the full dirt bike helmet or just a regular bicycle helmet. Again, trying to get through all of that is like swimming through mud to figure out what each specific piece goes to. And I imagine as highway safety continues to push this year, that some of those things are going to come out a little bit clearer for us.
You said everything in 2 wheels requires a helmet. I haven't read the new law. Is that up to a certain age? I know historically Utah's allowed motorcyclists to not wear helmets if they're over 18.
Yeah, so a normal motorcycle, obviously it falls in a completely different category.
Right.
So if you were over the age of, I think it's 21 now, and I could be wrong. It's not one we run into a lot. Most people on motorcycles, especially out here, are wearing helmets. On a traditional motorcycle though, from what my understanding is, if you are 21 or older, you don't have to wear one. But if you're 20 or younger, you do have to wear it.
Okay.
If you are 16 or younger, you can't operate a Class 3 electric assisted bicycle. If you're under 14, you can't operate an electric assisted bicycle with the electronic motor engaged on any public property, highways, pathways, sidewalks, unless you are under the supervision of a parent or guardian. And anybody under 8 years old can't do it at all. There are definitions as to what each of those is, so I'll give you just a quick rundown. A Class 1 electric assisted bicycle in the state statute states that it's equipped with a motor or electronics that provide assistance only when you are pedaling, and stops providing assistance when the bicycle reaches a speed limit of 20 miles an hour. A Class 2 electric assisted bicycle is the same thing, equipped with a motor or electronics that may be used exclusively to propel a bicycle, and is not capable of providing assistance when the bicycle reaches a speed of 20 miles an hour. So as soon as you hit 20, it says, we don't know how to do this anymore, and it stops. So obviously if you're going downhill, I guess the best one you could take is 30th Street at Monroe Boulevard. If you're on it and you get to your 20 miles an hour and then you kick it up pedaling, then yeah, you're going to get faster than that. Your electronic motor is not doing any of that assistance after that point. The Class 3 assisted bicycle is an assisted bicycle equipped with a motor or electronics that provide assistance only when you're pedaling, stops providing assistance when the bicycle reaches a speed limit of 28 miles an hour, and is equipped with a speedometer. Really, countywide, e-bikes are a problem. Statewide, they're a problem. Every single police agency is posting about them weekly, it seems like, on social media. But nobody, like, a couple of these things, they're, like I said, they're just muddy on what we're allowing and what we're not allowing. So yeah.
So what type of support do we have for enforcement? A lot of the things we've seen posted on social media are people, you know, they're tearing up our street, they're running down the sidewalk, you know, our cul-de-sacs, you know, what are we gonna do about this? Are those things that we just need to case-by-case basis, have them calling and turning in, and we'll try our best?
Yeah, exactly. I'll be honest with you, we get a lot of calls for service out here every day on reckless drivers. And our dispatch is known, or part of their protocol is to just broadcast the attempt to locate, and then the call vanishes off our screen. So if there's not a deputy or a traffic deputy out here to go and grab it as soon as it comes in, by the time, if the call sits and it's just called for a minute because we have a deputy on a priority call, or for example, I'm coming from far west and have to come out here, by the time I come to this spot where they called it in, the person is gone.
Yeah.
The same even if we're out here, they take off on us. I've been in more dirt bike pursuits in Hooper or e-bike pursuits in this little city than any other city in the county. And we can't chase them because they're kids and they're going to hurt themselves, and we don't want to be held liable for that. We don't want to put them in a position where they can hurt themselves. We have a great track record of following up and finding them eventually. It's going to have to be case by case that it's called in. Even better, if they can identify them, if they have video footage of it, it helps even more. Especially if we're going to start looking at citing juveniles or their parents. You know, if we're not here watching it happen in front of us, but you have it beautiful on your Ring doorbell camera, you know, we have deputies who know how to reverse engineer the math on frames per second to tell you how fast a vehicle is driving past your house, right? It takes a lot of legwork and stuff to go back in and do, but we're willing to do that to address the problem. We just did one in Far West on the hit and run with a truck. It's got a mailbox. Took us a week to get through all the math and whatnot, but the deputy was able to determine the car was doing almost 50 miles an hour through this residential neighborhood when it took out this guy's mailbox. But if they can identify them, that is the biggest part, because we just have so many people in all the communities out here that as soon as you throw a helmet on, I don't know you. I don't know anything about you. The e-bikes aren't equipped with license plates, so I can't just go back and look at my dash camera and hope that the video caught a license plate or an identifier number. You know, we had one in September last year. We were over by Sinclair, and we were 5700 south, 5500 west, just running speed right there. For the cars coming out of Davis that are cruising, the motorcycle came by us at like 12 over. We were just going to give the kid a warning, just say, hey, slow down. And he took off on us. The only thing we had on it was just, he had a Monster Energy logo on the side of his dirt bike that we could see on the video. And within an hour, we had caught him just right here west of the City Hall. So there are great opportunities to do that. It's just a matter of identifying the person to hold them accountable.
So what's the best thing we can do then as a city? Like you said, try to get the people, but they ride on our city property. And I know, you know, we've called it in. We had them do, they were doing donuts over on our basketball court. So what do you want to, what help can we be as a city council so our residents know we understand this is a serious problem. We're not turning a blind eye to this.
Right. I think it's just understanding what our limitations are as a sheriff's office. Like, people will give us the spiel all the time. If I stop somebody for speeding and they're upset about it, like, well, you never stop the cars that are speeding past, you know, my house, or that car's speeding right there. And my favorite thing to tell people is, I'm not an amoeba. I can't split into two things at one time. You happen to be the one I caught now. I will be more than happy to pay attention to these areas. But it's just being patient with us and knowing that our staffing levels are coming up, so you're going to see more deputies on the road. I mean, we have 6 deputies in their 3rd phase of training right now. A couple of them are going to need another month or so, but they're almost done. So that's 6 to 7 more police officers who are going to be ready to go. That can start bolstering some of these numbers so that you have a better opportunity to see the sheriff truck out here. And just be patient with us, get as much information for us as possible, and just be persistent. I know that's a lot of people, especially in the area of like 6300 West, there's a lot of complaint about reckless dirt bikes and speeding and everything. And the same thing I hear day in and day out is just that we don't care. I absolutely care. Speeding is my favorite thing. I have 2 lasers in my car, one that takes a video of you, and a radar in my car that it squeals all day and all night if I let it. So,
Well, surely these residents know where these kids live. Like, they do it enough and enough times in the day that they
If we had video on a phone.
probably see where they're pulling in.
And
and
have-
I
out,
would think
right?
so too.
Identify
Why
where they
don't they
pulled
just
into
tell
or
us
something. I
where
don't want us
they live?
doing pursuits, but.
Right.
It's a good
Yeah.
point, Ryan. You know, one of the things that the mayor, she posted on the mayor page about them doing donuts on our basketball court, and one of the people commented, you know, Mayor Karen, you know, they're,
Yeah,
and it's like this idea that's like, you know, we don't have a lot of money, but we have nice stuff. We try to keep it nice, you know what I mean? And like I said, those are my kids. I don't want somebody to tell me, because I would be the first one to walk them down here and put them in a service project to clean up the mess they made, let alone deal with the ramifications of probably losing those bikes if they're mine. And so I think that it also falls on the parents. I don't know how we get them encouraged to feel that they have a sense of responsibility to protect this as well.
yeah.
The other thing is, we live in the country, and from what I hear, the conversation is about public roads, public ways, all that stuff. There are a lot of folks who have a little bit of property you can ride your dirt bike on. You can be in the dirt, you can do the things, you know, live out in the country, you can play in your side by side in the field, if it's yours, you know, but, so I don't understand this idea, but it happens at our house, the cul-de-sac behind us, they spook our horses constantly, they sit out there, rev up their engines on the dirt bikes, and the horses take off running, and I don't know who these kids are and who they belong to, but it happens a lot.
It's adults too.
Yeah, I mean, we run into all type of clientele on them. It's just, some of the parents, we call them, and it's like, oh, Johnny would never. It's
Yeah.
like, I have Johnny by the scruff of his neck right now. Like,
My son's name's Johnny. Let's not use Johnny as an
Okay.
example. Just kidding. No, Johnny better not if he's mom.
But you know what I mean? Like, we get those parents, and we get the parents who are like, I stopped a kid in South Ogden the other night for doing 61 and a 25. And when I called his mom, she was like, Dad said I'm selling his car.
Yeah.
Right. I think if we had more support on the back end, that we didn't feel like because there's only so much we as law enforcement can do, right? We come, we give you a piece of paper, we say, don't do that again, we slap your wrist, right? We can now take and hold the e-bikes on a law enforcement hold if we need to. That's something they just put in. I just saw that earlier as well. And the only people we can release them to is a parent or their guardian.
Are you getting to the point, I've heard it mentioned, that there may be repercussions for the parents of these kids too if they're not dealing with it?
The state hasn't put any legislation in for it. If they're on a dirt bike, for example, dirt bikes can't operate on the roadway unless they're street legal, which means they need to have blinkers, they need to have a functioning headlight or whatever.
Yeah.
The whole laundry list of things. The parent can be issued a citation for allowing an unlicensed person to drive, and the state just upped that violation fine to, I think, $500.
Oh, that
I
would,
could be wrong. It
but
could be plus or minus, right?
whatever will help.
The state just put a brand new law that went into effect yesterday that if you don't have a valid driver's license, we shall impound your vehicle. We've already done 3 vehicle impounds for that countywide, just as the sheriff's office this week. And the same can be done on these dirt bikes and whatnot. Like,
It will help.
I'm touching nearly every city in this county, and I just stopped a kid in Pleasant View the other day who was ripping down Pleasant View Drive, and took me on a wild goose chase through the entire city, and then hid on the side of his house so I wouldn't find him. And he was 13.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I don't think our problem is so much e-bikes as
Yeah.
it is dirt bikes.
Yes, the dirt
I think
bikes.
it's
There's a
dirt
guy that
bikes.
rides a sand rail out near your house that loves to blast through that back road.
I mean, I don't see an e-bike going over 20 miles an hour
No.
ever out here.
And usually it's adults and they're just more
Yeah, it is.
leisurely riding, it's not the
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
It's the kids on dirt bikes.
So
And
should
like
we,
you said, they're already illegal to be on the road in the first place.
there's plenty
Like,
of
we don't need
adults.
another law to tell us they're already illegal
yeah.
to be on the road. Because they don't have a license and blinkers and all these things.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the e-bikes and whatnot in that statute are allowed to operate on the road if they want, just because we're encouraging bicyclists to already be on the road anyway. Because I don't want an adult bicyclist running your kid over on the sidewalk.
Right.
I'd rather than be in the road. But I want the kid to be on the sidewalk because I want them to be safe because they don't know how traffic works.
Sure.
Right? But the e-bikes can be there, they can be on pathways and trails, but each individual city or municipality can create a city ordinance, whatever, that tightens that and says, no, we're not going to allow it on our trail system. I was looking through the city code earlier, I couldn't find it, because that's another big point of complaint is the walking trail. When the dirt bike, we had an e-bike take off on us, I think the same day as the other one I was talking about down here, and actually, it was the same bike. He took off right there at 5100 South through the field and onto the canal, or onto the walking trail, and up all the way to 5100 West, where we lost him. He just vanished. But day in and day out, that is a complaint on at least the west side of 5900 West, is that they're out on the walking trails and they're causing problems.
Yeah.
So, as a city council, maybe we look at, or maybe you guys look at creating a new ordinance that puts the teeth down on that and says, electric bikes, dirt bikes, any electric assisted vehicle, motorized vehicle, however it needs to be worded, shall not be operating on the trails within Hooper City, or however you guys see that ordinance needs to work, right? Plain City, for example, created an ordinance 6 or 7 years ago that allows non-street legal ATVs and side-by-sides to operate on the state or on the city-owned property, city roads, because everybody in the city wanted to be able to take their side-by-side to Maverick to get their drink, right? Here, if you're operating it on the road and a side-by-side that doesn't have a license plate, and it's not street legal, we're going to stop you and we're going to have a conversation. But in Plain City, because their ordinance says they can, we just say, oh wow, that's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
We
But
need to
anyway,
look.
we got some golf carts around here.
We need to look at the ordinance. I know last year we had talked about it because we were having problems on the one trail. So we need to look at that again.
Well, and I think we have signs on most of the trails that says no
No
motorized
motorized,
vehicles.
I know.
yeah.
But I don't know if we have an ordinance to back that.
And that's where because like I said, I went looking. I'm all about having the teeth on the back end. I will go enforce whatever ordinance you want me to go enforce,
Yeah.
as long as I have the teeth to go
There you
do
go.
it. Because I'll go plug, not Johnny off the trail and say, hey, you can't be here. I drove my patrol car down the trail 2 weeks ago. We had a complaint. I was nearly on top of it. I popped off the road and I drove my patrol car down from 5900 West all along the trail and popped out on 6300 West and never found anybody. And then did the same going back up off into the east side and back on 5300 South. And I had good conversations with the people who were walking on the trail. I saw the big police car with the lights flashing. They were excited to see a police car on the trail. They were like, oh, you actually do care. You are here, right? But give us, if we can get the teeth behind it to say, no, we're going to do this. As a city, we can't have this. Then I think it's going to help out as well for that problem.
And should people call 911, the dispatch number?
I would just have them call the non-emergency dispatch line
Okay.
unless it is an active emergency.
Okay.
Because the 911 taker is going to give you the non-emergency line anyway and say, please
Yeah.
next time don't use this line.
Okay. Okay.
Mayor, can I ask another question? It's not related to the e-bikes, but kind of in the same field. We had an opportunity recently to see the incident report, the trending incidents in our city, and we tend to have a lot less calls than other cities, even our size. And I'm curious, what are some of the things that you're seeing trend here? Most of it all seemed like traffic, and with the increased headcount and the increased cost that we're talking about in our budget meeting tonight to maintain the contract with the sheriff. What are some things that we should be kind of considering? Because when I looked at the report, it's like Hooper's really not. Really, traffic incidents are what you get called out here for. So you're not really seeing any other issues.
I think it's hit or miss, and I think that the data doesn't tell the whole story, right? Every city has unique challenges, unique problems, and they're problem people. One of my favorite Hooper residents, who was a royal pain in the butt, no longer lives here. Lives in Ogden, which is a very good thing for the city, which I'm sure has driven your call volume down, right? It's a positive if the call volume's low. It means things are going well out here, right?
But we need to justify, we need to be able to explain to our residents because the cost is going up for us.
Right.
And so I want to be able to, have a clean conscience of telling people if we need to discuss taxes or something like that, like the value they're getting out of the sheriff's department. And I know there's
Yeah,
value.
I'm going to give you the best political answer I can give you. I am the low man on the totem pole for that question.
Sure, fair.
So I don't have all of the intricate answers that,
Yeah.
the political answer that I'm sure my lieutenant would love me to give right now. There's a lot of stuff on the back end that citizens aren't seeing that we are doing, working through things in the
Yeah.
city, right? the extra cost is going to help pay for additional detective positions, so when you're hit with a string of vehicle burglaries, we have detectives who can start working through those problems and helping identify a suspect to get your property back or hold somebody accountable for those things. An extra traffic deputy when the traffic unit goes back to doing what traffic unit does. I mean, I try to come out here at least twice a week. In fact, I was just telling you guys, I just wrote a speeding ticket on 5500 West right before I came in here. Traffic is a big concern. It is the biggest concern of mine, right? It's my specialty is. But the city is a freeway, and if we can have a couple extra deputies out here, I'm sure that our complaints from citizens are going to go down, and additionally, the safety is going to go up, right?
We actually talked a little bit about having our residents do more stuff and get caught so we get more bang for our buck.
I mean, that is an option too.
But then that buck will go up.
Yeah.
Did you have a
This is
comment?
gonna get worse when 1800 becomes the off-ramp for the freeway.
Yep.
This is just a pass-through.
It
To
is,
get to the freeway, 59, 55, and 59,
yeah.
they're all just a pass-through to get to 1800 on.
And we're already seeing that. Speed-wise, some of my biggest speed violations have come out of Hooper, in terms of miles per hour over the speed limit, right?
Especially because you cross a couple school zones and we have some lower mile per hour areas.
Yeah, and what we've done to drop, or what you guys have done to drop the speed limit to 30 on all of our thoroughfares has been, in my opinion, great. As an enforcement opportunity, it's awesome. Nobody goes 30 miles an hour on 51, and nobody goes 30 miles an hour on 55.
Except
I set my cruise control.
Mayor's husband.
Yeah, Mayor's husband does. Yes,
Yeah.
we did tell him that. And 4700 West, we went from having, you could go out there and sit for an hour and stop 30 cars between two of you, and now we're lucky if we're getting like 2 or 3 a day.
You got their attention though.
Yeah, they caught, yeah.
Yeah.
People, you'd see 2 deputies because we would have to put 2 deputies there because the problem was so big. As soon as one person was stopped, here comes another car at 45 miles an hour, and it's just a concession all day long, right? And with the increase, obviously, we're asking for a couple of new deputy positions, right? That's needed. I think the best part, or the best way you can articulate that to the citizens is our number. We're trying to shoot for 1 deputy per 1,000 residents, right? Presently, our number is, if I remember correctly, 0.52 deputies per 1,000 residents. So we're under half of what we
Almost
should
double,
be, right?
yeah.
Ogden City is at 2 for 1, for example. And they're running their tails off all night long. They absolutely need 2 for 1, right?
Or 3 or 4.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there are nights where we could need 3 or 4, depending on the night. I mean, the weather is getting warmer, so the call volume is going to go up, and you're going to see that in your daily reports, your weekly report. As the weather gets better, the crime starts to get worse, and the problems at home start to get worse. The same can be said as the weather gets really bad, because now people are cooped up at home, and then they start fighting with their spouse, and they start beating each other. So,
Yeah.
but I think the best way to articulate that to everybody is we're pushing to get more deputies to push us to getting a safer ability for everybody, not just the citizens, but for us too.
Well, I think being able to articulate that, the 1 to 1,000, I mean, that puts 10 deputies out here, and we probably don't have, we probably have 4 or 5 that are able to come out regularly. So that helps us understand how to explain that as well.
Yeah, and I think right now, if I remember the sheriff's exact number, I think it takes us from 0.52 to 0.73 deputies.
Yeah.
Because I think they're adding 6 additional positions.
Yeah.
And I know the ask is obviously, I'm sure the ask is going to be more over the next few years to help get
they had
that
asked
number
for
up.
10.
But
How's retention? Are you still struggling with that a lot?
since the pay study went through, the retention has been great.
Good.
We
I know like a while back you had like 8 deputies leave in 30 days.
I think it was like 13.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a bunch,
I know from January 1 to today, I think we've lost 1.
Good.
And he was in the patch that was going to leave anyway
Yeah.
in the background. He just took a
Sweet.
while to get done. So things are getting better. We just had a new lateral deputy start yesterday from West Valley City. He'll need like a week or 2 in the truck with a deputy here just to learn our processes, and then we're going to kick him out. Say, please go be your own cop. So we have two that are graduating the academy as we speak. That's why Lieutenant Krager's not here. So they're coming through, and then I think we're taking a couple more out of the jail, putting them through an academy, and it's just a slow process.
How much y'all like inmates locked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Officers.
Corrections deputies transferring to
Part of a good behavior
Oh,
program.
So tonight we have a public hearing, and because we're doing our tentative budget, and then we're going to talk about doing a truth and taxation, and part of that, as Councilmember Craig said, is because we have an increased amount. So, would you feel comfortable if during the public, not to call you on the spot then, but as we're discussing, that you could address just so some of those same things you just told us, I think would help. And we don't even know. We don't know if we're going to have a lot of people come, no one come, but
Just explaining that increase.
yeah.
Are you gonna be here, I guess?
I will be here. I am your event security for that.
Appreciate it.
I'm sure I can at least touch on a couple of the staffing issues and why.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would
If we
be
saw a
good.
large imposition of questions, maybe we could call on you if you wouldn't mind to at
Yeah.
least speak to that.
Yeah.
The value of the staffing increase, or maybe even articulating the challenge that you have with speeding out here and the ability to have one or more officers could just offset that to a measure.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you being here. Okay, we're gonna move on because we have a few other things. So, commercial hobby kennel uses. So, we have a conditional use permit right now for a hobby kennel license. So, I'm gonna let Malcolm just explain that, and then I'll tell you what our attorney, because I asked him for his help on this as far as what we can and can't do.
The planning commission reviewed a CUP for a hobby kennel. It's been tabled, but it'll go back to the next planning commission, and it's going well. They're handling it well. They had some additional information they needed that was pertinent to making a decision, but staff and talking with Sherry as well thought that we should just take the opportunity to look at our ordinance and make sure there's not anything we want to update. The planning commission handled it well, but I do think they felt a little bit surprised maybe at some of the amount of dogs that were allowed in different options. So if you look at the printout or the handout and go down to those definitions, you can see our kennel for a commercial license. Looks like 4 or more dogs and 9 or more cats. No more than 10 animals for each acre. Those are permitted in R1 zones. It does look like when about a year or two ago, we introduced a R75 zone. It's a 3/4 acre zone. It's also permitted through a different ordinance for commercial kennels. So think of like Kimball Estates over by the Burnt Church. They could have a commercial kennel under our current ordinance. And then with a hobby kennel, which is the one we're dealing with specifically, 4 to 10 dogs can be maintained there. So there's really only so many conditions you can place on these. Obviously, if we were going to change anything, we'd work through it with legal counsel to make sure, the numbers were flat. We probably get, Morgan, do you think you've been here longer, 1 or 2 applications a year for a hobby kennel, or a couple a year? So not a ton, but we do see them. We do have 1 commercial kennel that I'm aware of out on 7500 West. But I don't know of any others. Do you know of any others?
How many dogs do they have?
I don't know.
if they're actually functioning right now.
Yeah, I think they're not
The
working.
ones that were there have moved out, so it's
Yeah.
about that
I
property.
got a lot of friends that have one.
Yeah, they had 3 acres if I recall. So by the ordinance, they could have had about 30 dogs in.
Well, I sent this message to Darren. Darren's actually out of town at a conference, and so he's not going to be with us tonight. So I asked him this because I wanted to know, and the reason why I wanted you to hear about this is because you end up hearing about it anyway. This is something that goes to Planning Commission, but if it's an ordinance change, they are fulfilling whatever our ordinances are. And so he said, according to Utah Code 18-101-1, a municipality may not adopt or enforce a breed-specific rural regulation or ordinance regarding dogs. Any breed-specific rural regulation, policy, or ordination regarding dogs, as far as with the breed, is void. So we can't, because that was some of the questions that came up at Planning Commission, is that there were residents, because
That's wild.
this specific breed of dog, but so we can't do this specific debris, but we could change our ordinance as far as how many they could have.
That'd be wise.
Yeah. Is
So-
there anything you're seeing in kind of planning that is indicating we might want to tighten the reins at all? Are we seeing it at a point where it's like, hey guys, we might be allowing a little too much, or is it just at the point that they were reviewing the code to make an approval, they were like, wow, I didn't realize we're opening that much?
The latter.
Yeah.
I don't think demand is huge. I don't think the demand is problematic. It would just be the singularity, one instance of it just being a lot potentially. But that's not for me to say. I just wanted to make sure we're all aware of how many dogs you have. So you can have 10 for a hobby kennel, which can be a lot in a residential neighborhood, I guess. So
Yeah, what is a dog? Like, I know you can have 4 animal units on an acre. What is a dog considered in an animal? Is it a fourth of an animal unit, or is there like a,
It's one, isn't it?
is a dog 1 animal unit? A quarter? Yeah, I think it was.
I can look. I'm not sure
I
if
don't
I've ever
know.
noticed if it called it out. But that's yeah, horse is
Horse
one,
is one.
cows are one. I'll pull it up real quick.
Yeah, I know, because I looked into it, like a buffalo's 2. You can get an elk. There's a lot of cool things about the animal units. I looked into this.
But I want you to look through this, and, you know, this is just a
Yes, ma'am.
discussion. We certainly aren't voting, but I think if this is something as a council you would like to see changed, again, our planning commission is just doing an excellent job at following our ordinances, but and it's really hard when you have residents come and say, well, wait a minute, we don't want to have this breed of a dog, this many dogs, but they're following our ordinance.
Right.
So if there's something legislative we would like to change, then that has to be up to us.
Right.
You know, it's not for this one that's already applied, because the ordinance that is in place now is what they applied under.
Doesn't look like our animal unit contemplates dogs because we have a separate ordinance. And I would say that's unique to us. I looked at West Point and Plain City and West Haven, and they didn't really have it the same way we do. It was kind of hard to understand, but generally they would have a maximum number you could have, you know, without any different conditions being placed, but then they didn't define it specifically. It was looser. At that point, you would need a conditional permit. It was kind of a one-off basis, so they didn't limit themselves, or, you know, and I'm not sure that's exactly how it could be done. But I guess what I mean by that is for ours, for instance, I think the hobby kennel was 4 to 10. Is that what it says there?
That's right.
So I would imagine you can have 3 dogs prior to needing. Also, someone could have 3 dogs, I'm guessing. But that's how most cities handled it. Is we kind of do it inversely. We imply how many dogs you can have before you need a kennel. Most of them had a maximum, and then after that implied that it would be conditional or, you know, something extra. And then they didn't really limit themselves in how many, you know, they could allow or not. And I guess at that point, then you can maybe one-off decide. But
Yeah.
that seems how their ordinance read, but it was different than ours. I'm not saying one's right or wrong, just a thought.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is because you think of like, you know, especially commercial, this is done for a business. And then you got a guy who's raising cattle, and like he's, you know, obviously it takes a certain amount of feed, but like that's also a business. And it's like, so we're, you know, are we being consistent there? That's my question is like, we're allowing 30 on 3 acres. Will we allow 30 cows on 3 acres? And what does that break down to animal unit as far as commercial consideration? Like for a hobby kennel in your personal life, you're breeding for hunting, whatever, I think that's probably a little different private property use in my mind. But when I think of like somebody commercially raising like German Shepherds and they're selling them, and it's the same business model as somebody raising goats or sheep or whatever, and are we being consistent or restrictive of animal units there? I'm just curious if
Can
that.
you look into it as separating as ag use and
Right.
is that what you're?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, even though we're not eating the dogs, but you know, even though but we're using them for a commercial purpose if they're at a commercial kennel versus alpacas, you know. And so we would have a restriction on that, considering it as an agricultural business use. And this is a version of animal husbandry than those dogs. I mean, I'm just curious if that's part of a consistent consideration.
Well, we
Yeah.
do review this, and I don't know what we have already lined up for our next agenda. Then I know we have budget stuff, so we'll see. I mean, when we can fit this in, but we'll give you enough notice that, you know, let's look at this and see if we think we're fine with this. If we're not, though, it needs to be something that we decide so we can give that direction to the planning
Just
commission.
curious, on the agenda for the one that we discussed, the planning commission discussed, there were 2 on the agenda, but one of them pulled their application. Does anybody know exactly why they pulled that?
There was the owner of the property, it was a tenant, and the owner didn't actually want a kennel, so there was just there was an error on processing. We didn't realize it wasn't the owner specifically, and we didn't realize the owner had a problem with it. So
Yes.
Yeah, it was a rental unit.
So I mean, yeah, we can look at it in the future, but, so we're saying 4 dogs, 4 to 10. I mean, if you go any less than 4 out here in Hooper, the way I look at it, we're gonna run into problems, because there's a lot of people that have 3, 4 dogs, you know. And so then are we gonna have to have them fill that out? I mean, are we gonna run into more issues? I mean, my kids that live with me right now, they have 3 dogs, and
Are they real dogs or are they maybe little tiny?
no, one's actually a shepherd that they train with the police. It's an attack
Yeah.
shepherd, but I can go out and play with that dog all I want. When he's in training mode, he's got a jacket on, and you know you better watch out.
Yeah.
But without that jacket on, that dog knows he's just a regular dog. But you know they've got 3 dogs in ours, and it's not just our house. I mean, I could give you a list of.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so if we go less than that, I think we're
No,
gonna run into problems.
I don't think it would be less. I think it's, do we want to go up to 10?
Right.
I think that is it. You know, I don't think it, and I'm grateful for these people that came in and tried to do this the right way. You know, we probably have other people that are doing it, and we just don't know about it.
Sure.
So I really, you know, kudos to them that they did. But that's the question. We can't do it. We can't do breed. We can't discriminate.
Yeah.
But do we want to have it be 10? So
And that's where it's at right now.
now they can have up to
It's
10.
4 to
Yeah,
10
4 to
right
10.
now.
Okay.
And I think that's interesting too, because there's also an animal unit restriction on like if it's a calf, like when it's paired with the mother. So I wonder if like we consider, well, it's a litter they just had, and maybe they're getting rid of some of them, so we're not going to pick
Yeah.
on it because they got 6 dogs, you know.
Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't catch you.
yeah, you can make it that real
Oh,
quick.
What happens when they have a litter,
Yeah.
yeah.
they're raising animals or dogs
Mhm.
to sell commercially, and they fall in a hobby kennel, and what happens when the litter has.
A lot of codes use 4 months. A lot of codes contemplate 4 months as a threshold, right? I guess that's when they can go, at least safely. So a lot of them will have 4 months once a day. That's another thing. If you did do it, 2 thoughts just come to mind as I was looking over it again. We're allowing hobby kennels even in R4, so quarter-acre zones. So that could be another thought. Even if you didn't reduce the number, you could at least consider what zones do we want hobby kennels in. Quarter-acre seems small, but maybe not. I don't know.
Well, I think that seems small for 10 dogs.
But so right now it is, and then beyond that, another little nuance. If you guys do dive into if the council dives into this, the other cities all had, and I'd have to read it again thoroughly, but they all make you register your dog,
That's right.
and we don't have anything requiring that. So I don't know if it's that significant, but you do register your dog with the health or animal control, so that.
It has to have shots.
Yeah, and we don't require that, so probably not a huge deal, but they do. So if we're gonna go after it, we might want to add some details like that. So I don't know.
Especially if it's a kennel. I mean, if it is a commercial, I think there is a little bit difference, but, okay. Okay, we'll look at this and we'll,
So are we just gonna put it on the agenda and come up with something?
yeah.
My
yeah.
feeling is if, we just say, well, go look at it.
No, it'll be on the agenda. I haven't seen what we have on our next upcoming. I know in June, when we do the budget, it can only be budget.
Yeah, and we were gonna do that probably June 4th. That was one thing I wanted to just kind of ask real quick.
Yeah,
Is, we have a public hearing, on the resolution for August 6th, but we probably ought to add one for June. And I was
Did you say
proposing,
August 6th?
Mhm.
Okay.
and maybe I was proposing that we probably ought to add in the resolution to add the June 4th when we adopt that resolution is.
Okay.
And have 2 of them to cover ourselves to make sure we have,
okay. So we probably could then without,
yeah.
I haven't seen what we
And
have
I think
coming up in May, but we,
As, I think with that,
I don't know that.
What's the August meeting for?
the August would be also for a public hearing.
Yeah, I thought
that's
we had to
if
have
we
the
do the
budget
truth in
adopted.
tax.
Yeah.
But if you're doing the truth in taxation,
They,
They
changes.
give you a
Yeah.
month, they give you more time. Okay, that's what, yeah, I thought the same thing.
yeah, so the
Yeah.
June 4th, from, and I'll have to read the exact wording, cause it's all all changed so much this last year. But the June 4th would give us the option to basically say, yes, we are for sure doing truth and taxation. We, acknowledge that, and we're waiting to do that final budget.
Yeah.
Even though it
So-
starts July 1st.
What's that?
Doesn't it start July 1st?
Well, when you have truth and taxation, they give you till August, so you operate on the tentative budget until you adopt the budget in August. So that's,
So could you do it all in June? The same meeting?
I don't know as if you could. I would
know.
love to if we could, but I don't know as if you actually legally can.
I know when I
From
talked
what
to
I
the
understand, you can.
county, you have to, there's a certain time and you have to, ours can't be on the night of any other, so if like, in Weaver Sewer District isn't doing one, but if the school district was doing one, if the fire, they all have to be different nights. And I don't know I don't know, that's a good question.
Yeah, because Darren was telling
I
me
don't-
today, I was asking him questions about this, like how committed we are on this proposal of the resolution, whatever. And he was explaining that we're gonna still have like 3 more opportunities to vote this down beforehand, because the process requires specific amount of
Yeah.
times for us to change our mind
Yeah.
or say no to this.
And everything I've ever, and I'd have to pull the law, but every time I've done truth and taxation, the final truth and taxation is adopted in August.
Really?
And that's everything I've heard from every city. Now, that being said, if the truth and taxation relates to some type of a expenditure, I, of course, encourage us not to do that expenditure until after that's been adopted, because that can cause problems. So, I know.
Oh, what you're saying is like if it is, we're committing to paying for something, then we don't get the truth and taxation approved, and now it's in our budget, and we have to pay a bill.
Yeah,
We don't have the money.
yeah,
That's what
we're
you're
like,
They've
oh,
spent the money
you're in the
before
headlight
they-
look.
saying. Where in this case, I don't think
I don't think it's an option. Our option
Not gonna let
is.
us pay less, are
I
they?
was gonna say that.
That's on your pay grade.
Yeah.
We're all down over the-
Okay,
I mean,
so,
part of
That's a
the
good answer.
part of the impact, the property tax, proposed property tax impact schedule. It has the police on there, but I did that because that's what we're doing it for. But if it doesn't go through, we still have to pay that amount. It's just we're paying it from fund balance. So that's why I added at the very end. Therefore, let's say this will be a continued cost to the city. Therefore, it is not advised to use fund balance to fund these increases.
Right.
If it was a one-time expenditure, then, maybe you use some fund balance and you don't do the tax increase.
Right.
But it's gonna continue. So if we don't do it this year, I would still advise to do it next year, because you can only use fund balance so long, and
Right.
fund balance runs
So
out.
we broke.
Yep.
so let's plan on then, back to you, to answer your question then, because we're thinking of that June. So at our next meeting in May, we will plan on having this on the agenda to have some consideration for us to vote on. So maybe be thinking of that, and, we'll get even more with Malcolm and some recommendations as far as, do we want to reduce the amount of animals? The notes I wrote down was, zone do we allow them in, how many do we allow them, and do we want to then require them to have a licensing process along with that? Which, anyway, those are some things to be considering. Okay, so the next thing then is the lease agreement, which is also in there, because we passed the ordinance where all lease agreements will go before the city council. We've had someone that came in and asked about doing a lease agreement along the slough, but they haven't finished all their paperwork yet. But that, we may see that also in May. So again, look at this. So what has happened in the past is this was something that staff did. And there was a place where the mayor signed it, but it basically was, they came in with some considerations with the staff. And so you can read through this and see there's some things that I think we need to look at, and maybe some things we want to change. Is this something we want to continue? Expand $1 a year for 50 years? Not all leased property, even along the slough, are the same amount of property. Some have more, some have less. Some have animals in their leased property. Some we haven't allowed animals. Some we say it can only be so close to the slough. So I think this is something we need to look at a little more, because we passed the ordinance saying we're going to do this, But we never looked at this as far as what we're going to do.
I read through it actually twice, and I don't know what I would change. I thought it looked pretty good, but, you know, since those homes got put in along the slough, I mean, we used to live in it, growing up as kids. I knew it all real well, but now with the homes there, you know, everything I read there, I thought it was fine.
I do find it interesting that we have it clearly state here in the lease that no motorized vehicle, ATVs or whatever are allowed. But then our ordinance doesn't say, but our lease to the people who have the property next to that trail,
Yeah,
it's in that agreement, but it's not in the ordinance.
yeah,
What I think is interesting though, what you talked about is like animals. And I mean, I feel like one of the things I love about it is that everyone's been able to do kind of their own thing, as long as it's an improvement and it's not a damage, you know, it's like something that's gonna be beneficial. And walking along that trail, I mean, if they're not like vicious animals or whatever, like people might like to see that. It's a little bit of connection to nature or whatever. So I don't know how everyone else feels about having animals that close or in that area of leased property, but I guess it depends on what animal, what type of animal, what we're doing.
Goats would be great.
Yeah.
To eat down all the
Yeah.
forage.
Yeah.
Dogs
But
might be
steer.
a little bit of a problem, people walking down the trail with their dog, and then when they're attacking them, that could be.
That's
Or a bull.
Yeah, that against the slough, Dwayne and Susie Army have goats right there and they eat all the weeds and it works great. Yeah.
well, and in here it says they can't be within 35 feet of the slough, but like you mentioned, you know, the one, the RVs, it's beautiful along there, and right down here, unfortunately, the Kites whose home just had that tragic fire, but they've landscaped down by the slough, and it's really nice. But that's something then we probably need to look at, because currently ours says they're not allowed to be within 35 feet. So anyway, those are just some things. Let's look at this and see, because I know in the past we've had a particular individual that wanted to put some horses, and we've said, no, you can't. Well, can we or not, or is that something we want to change? If they can, is it a limit to how many they could put so they don't completely eat it to
Anytime you
dirt?
put animals in next to a slough and they go and start caving in the banks of the slough, that just creates problems in itself.
I was gonna say your SWIP plan might
Yeah.
have a problem with that.
Yeah.
You might wanna check with JUB
Yeah,
on your SWIP ordinance
And
with
now-
that.
So the
yeah.
animals can't be allowed to go within that 35 feet of the
Yeah.
slough, I would say.
I probably ought to go walk it one of these days, so I know exactly.
yeah. Well, and it's different. You take the Hubbard Landing Slough is a little bit different of an area than when you take the one from 59 West. But anyway, this will be on our agenda next time too. So if you would just, because if there are any, if this is great how it is, then, and again, do you want them to come to a city council meeting and present this to you so you have a chance to vote? That's how our ordinance reads. So that's why we just want to have everything right, you know, and there might be bigger than even a slough. We have another piece of property that again is a problem with our kids on motorbikes, and I've had 4 different individuals that have asked about leasing that. You know, can they lease that? And they'd put a fence around it, but again, they'd want to put maybe 2 or 3 horses or something in it to help eat it down, because our public works, they don't really have time to go mow it. Now it's tall, and now we have these kids, but then we need to, I think we need a little more, maybe some specific rules of what we want, even maybe in addition. But
I
again,
thought
this could be
we
on
didn't,
agenda.
I thought we talked about these leases not being, when we were talking about wanting to see leases, I thought we excluded these. Like, I don't know, I thought when we said.
Ones were already in place.
Okay,
All
but
the
we
ones
did want to
already
see
in
every new,
place.
Yes,
So these
new
are the
ones
ones
need to be visited.
okay.
Yeah, but even though one might be bigger than the other, I think we still need to have some designations with that then. You know, we can't say, well, yours is only 30 feet, you don't have this, well, yours is 60 feet, or some of those behind Hubbard Landings are quite a distance, or that one that runs along the slough that's on the corner of 51 and 55 that we're having problems with the dirt bikes.
Well, and if they're gonna put animals on it, it would be really helpful if the adjacent landowner, because water is gonna be an issue when you're talking about down there.
Yeah,
Especially with a 35-foot setback from the slough, so they don't walk the bank in.
yeah,
So it would make more sense to probably gear it towards the local landowner than it would be somebody else that's gonna have to haul water. That's
Yeah.
gonna be their option.
What do we do to maintain consistency of approval of these leases, since everyone's gonna be kind of a unique scenario? If we're gonna visit it every time somebody's coming and wanting to approve something, how do we make sure we're not just like arbitrarily deciding on a Tuesday, here's how we feel about animals, you know what I mean? Like, I'm being a little hyperbolic, you know what I mean? Like, how do we make sure, where historically it was kind of an administrative task? I think it'd be important that, because the whole point of this, right, was so the city doesn't have to maintain maintenance. So if we don't issue a lease, now the city has to maintain that lease, right?
Exactly. And Darren even said in a lot of cities it's called a license rather than a lease, which
Yeah.
has a little bit different feel to it, and then it is done administratively. I'm fine with these always coming to city council, but I agree, we need to have something a little more written so it doesn't feel like we're letting you and not you. Then it becomes not fair. I think it needs to be, and we need to look at some of those other, extenuating circumstances, just like you mentioned,
Yeah,
that if there needs to
Yeah, I would
be
have
water.
asked that question, so.
So if we're gonna spend a ton of money on administrative, things to deal with all this and all the issues that we're gonna have to, would it be cheaper just to pay our guy to go down and mow it and not do a lease?
Well, it might, except for in the past, they really haven't had time and it hasn't gotten done. And it is property that probably could be useful for somebody next to it,
I
but
think it's something the residents like, right? Like a lot of our, people like making it a little bit custom. It makes the trail look cool, because you have to trust that people are doing the right thing, right? But it is kind of a fun thing to see everyone's unique
yeah.
approach to that piece.
Can you give me a ride down there one time?
With a
So
live,
I can walk it, yeah.
We'll start at the top.
No, I think when they say electronic vehicles, they don't mean your jazzy scooter. You can ride the jazzy scooter.
Okay, remember, there's no ordinance currently that I can find.
Okay.
So, put your jazzy scooter on there.
okay, so we have one more thing to cover, but Cammie, I don't want to run out of time. Do you have anything you need to address us before? When it gets to this portion of the agenda, I am turning it over to Cammie because there is exactness.
Yeah, I have to read. You're gonna be tired of hearing me. Sorry,
We
I
never
apologize
tire of
in
hearing
advance. Oh, my husband does, so I'm
Well,
sure
I know,
you.
but he's not here.
You might be watching.
Can I bring up one thing with the budget?
Yes.
I just saw a number typo that we maybe ought to solve right now. Under, I don't even know what page this is, it says proposed property tax impact schedule.
Okay, I think I know what typo
That's the
you.
one with the property tax rate.
Yeah.
The current property tax rate is 0.0283, and the proposed one is 0.44798. I don't think that's accurate. I think it's gotta be 0.00364-ish
Do you want me to write that wrong?
to get the $36.38 on a $450,000 loan.
Probably, we could be missing, A couple of
There's
zeros.
2 zeros that are missing for sure.
I think so. That's on this impact schedule.
Yeah.
And
I need to
then
get that corrected.
It's on the one that,
Oh,
it's right on the very front at the proposed property.
Okay, so,
I did the math on a $450,000 loan, and even the 0.00447 is too high for what we're asking for. I came up with 0.00364.
I think what I did.
And the county will actually
They'll assign.
give that to
Yeah.
us, but it's good to have,
Yes, I like.
yeah.
Please double check me on
Yeah,
everything.
why
I'm
is
so
it-
paranoid on all
Why does
this,
the
guys.
top say it's going from 0 to 0? And
Yeah,
Mayor-
and
Mayor was like,
that's
"That's 'cause
what
the
I
county
had
will
seen, and we've
assess it."
corrected that.
So I didn't know how important that,
Fine, you gotta be correct.
No, I
Yeah,
think
It
you're,
has to be, yeah.
yeah.
somebody in the community sees that. would go,
Okay, well, Cammie's looking at that because we're almost out of time here and we only have 5 minutes left. So last year, and it was, I don't remember how many months, we put a moratorium on issuing business licenses for, it was childcare for any kind of youth facility because we had the drug treatment center that came. This is also something that we need to look at because we have another one that is coming through. And again, this is one that's already in place, but Planning Commission is going to see that we need to see what we're going to do with this because it came and went. That moratorium came and went, and we never did anything else about it.
So the moratorium's lifted at this point?
And currently in our ordinance, and we don't have a lot with that either, do we, other than our ordinance states that we do allow that in residential. So that's something we need to look at, and if that's something we might need to change, because currently our ordinance allows it.
We do need to look at that, because
Yeah,
we promised the residents we would.
we did.
And it's robust. Drug and alcohol, child treatment, nursing, foster. We have a code, and I think our code for a while was adequate. We just didn't have a lot of requests, but we're getting more requests. There's
Yeah, and I was
Because
hoping,
they know we don't have a ordinance to stop it, so.
and I asked Darren if he would also look into that, and I didn't hear back from him. So I can't give you any more information, because I told him, I said, what we need to know is legally what we can and cannot do. It does us no good for us to say, oh yeah, we're gonna have this ordinance, you know, but then legally we can't, and then he didn't get that.
So we need to get that on.
How long was that previous one?
It was 6 months, but it expired how many months ago? Yeah,
So can we just reenact the same exact one for another 6 months and then give us time to look at it, or?
well, I feel like that was kicking the can down the road a little bit. I feel like we need to be proactive on this and get something done. Yeah, we
And
just
you said the
need to do
commitment,
it.
Councilmember Hill, was that we would do something, right?
We did.
Because there was a lot of concern about the
Yeah,
Tree trim place.
I remember those meetings.
They need
sitting
to
out here.
put some heat on Darren to get it done.
yeah, so we need to, so again, you know, those, so I feel like the commercial, these 3 things we've, you know, talked about in our work meeting, and I always like to bring them to you to a work meeting first, so you can kind of have it on your radar, so we're not just throwing an ordinance at you. So this, you'll see this, so again, I don't know what else we have. Sometimes we already have things that are already pre-scheduled, but anyway, but I think we absolutely need to do that.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's do it.
sounds good.
Okay, Tammy, did you have anything else for us then on that? I'm glad you saw that.
Yeah,
I noticed the zeros, but I didn't notice all the other zeros. Okay, yeah.
Appreciate your
Should I
comment.
It is 0.0004.
put this in my car and I'll come back.
What's that?
So I'm just gonna put this away and I'll come back.
Okay. What was that? What was that again?
It's 0.004177736 is the estimate.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I was trying. At least it's not the 2.8.
I don't think anybody needs to know.
Yeah, that's somebody else's goal. Oh. I'm glad it's not us.
I can't even imagine.
I can't imagine for,
What?
Roy City.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't get theirs approved last year.
That's part of the reason why it's so much this year. They didn't do it right
and
last year.
they did their raises for their employees, counting on it. So now
They're asking for 2 million.
2.8.
Yeah, we'll wait for you.
It's like a 67% increase. Ours sounds bad, but it's not that bad. You know,
Yeah.
But
when you
they did it.
consider.
And they screwed up.
I was listening to a meeting and they said, did you hear about the fire and police?
Well, I read the list of what we're paying everybody, and I know some of the people, Travis Smith, but he's like, something director, he's
Morgan, I wonder if it's free and spread.
$60,000 a year.
Can you print from that?
Some of them are just way too much. Yes. Yes. And I said, really? Yeah, we're talking every one is like $100,000. Yes. How do I get that job? No, I don't sure how many years.
So David, how many elk are we letting in the slough now? Zacas, what did you land on?
We're not letting any of these.
No elk? Come on, that'd be awesome.
But I do think an elk is 2 animal units.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
You do have to get a special permit from the state before you can do any wildlife.
Yeah.
Yeah? Yes.
But it is interesting to know
That is interesting.
what's qualified as a.
We had an antelope in my neighborhood a while back, and that got removed, because that's not legal.
Isn't the internet fun?
Yeah. Oh. Well, I mean, I think like 25 chickens is an animal unit. Something to that effect. I don't know. It's all over. But I mean, imagine on 1 acre and you
Recording in progress.
We would like to welcome you to our city council meeting. This is for Hooper City, and it is Thursday, May 7th. I am Sherry Bingham, I'm the mayor, and I will be conducting this meeting. We are going to have our opening ceremony, a pledge of allegiance by Councilmember Craig, and then a reverence by Councilmember Hancock, and we want to excuse Councilmember Fowers, who had another obligation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, as we come before you tonight, we wish to thank thee for this beautiful city that we have to live in and the things that we enjoy as citizens of the city. We ask thee to continue to watch over us, keep the residents out of harm's way, and guide us in directions that will benefit our city and help maintain an atmosphere out here that we have all grown to love. We ask thee to watch over members of the community and help us to answer questions that they may have as best as we can, and guide us in the directions that we should proceed with the things that we decide. We ask these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. We don't have any upcoming events to announce right now, and so the first thing on our agenda is public comments. If you have a public comment, if you would come to the microphone, state your name, and you have 3 minutes. Okay, seeing no public comments, then we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes. Hopefully all of you have had a chance to review the minutes. If there's any corrections to those?
I have one correction there. It says council members excused, it has me listed there. I actually joined for the closed door meeting. I was stuck in transit in an airplane and couldn't attend the meeting virtually, but I did join for the closed door meeting and voted on the water attorney and voted on the adjournment. So I need to update that to say I was present for the closed door meeting and the adjournment.
Is there any other corrections that anyone saw? Okay, is there someone then that would like to make a motion with that correction to approve the minutes?
So moved.
The motion was made by Councilmember Craig. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second's made by Councilmember Hill. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Okay, so the next thing we have then on our agenda, this is a public hearing for the fiscal year 2026 to 2027 tentative budget. Again, you can come to the microphone and have 3 minutes, and if you would please state your name. Okay.
Is this open for anybody, or are we talking about the budget?
We already had our public comments, so this is open on the budget. Okay, and I actually needed to move that, have someone move us into a public hearing and then bring us back out of the public hearing. So if I could have a motion to move this into a public hearing?
I'll make a motion to move us into a public hearing to discuss the fiscal year 2026-2027 tentative budget.
The motion was made by Councilmember Craig. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second was made by Councilmember Hancock. All in favor?
Aye.
So now we're moving into our public hearing. So if there's anybody, and this is on the budget, the tentative budget for fiscal year 2026-27, if there's anyone that has a comment to make. Okay, seeing none then, we have to have a motion to move back into our regular meeting.
I'll make a motion to move back into the regular meeting of the public hearing for the tentative budget fiscal year 26-27.
The motion was made by Councilmember Hancock. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second is made by Councilmember Rapoletto. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now we're back into our regular meeting. So tonight, our action item number 8 has to do with our tentative budget. And we're going to turn the time over to Cami Moss, who is our city treasurer, and she's going to take us through exactly what we need to do as far as this process. Thank you for being here with us.
Okay, so, is it, okay, Morgan's got a little slideshow, but, it's basically just a summary of the budget that you've all gone through and, studied with all the fun that we've had. So, and then there's also handouts for the public over there on the table, just with the summary. However, the budget, once the tentative budget has been approved, we'll put it on the website and do all the proper information that we need to with this. So right now, the tentative budget is got a total income of $4.2 million for the general fund, and then our expenditures would be 4.8. There's a shortfall of 601,000 in that budget. That 601 is planning on being spent from the Class C roads restricted funds to do some road improvements. So we are spending part of our Class C roads money down, but that I feel is a good decision. On the next page, next slide, the proposed property tax, that amount does include a proposed property tax. Everybody was given the opportunity to pick up the proposed property tax impact schedule. We did see one little typo. We forgot to add some zeros on the proposed tax rate, so that has been replaced over by the door for anybody that would like to grab that. So basically, the Hooper City's proposed property or current property tax rate is 0.000283. The current property tax revenue generates about $268,000. The proposed property tax rate would be 0.00417736. That generates $396,904 approximate. These are estimates of course. The additional property tax revenue that we are trying to generate is $128,000. The $128,000 would estimated increase in the property tax rate is 47.61%, but that is just as that percentage is kind of misleading, I'll be honest, as we've all discussed. So the estimated increase for a primary residence of $450,000 would be approximately $36.38 a year. So it's not a huge increase. The estimated increase for business valued at $450,000 would be about $60.63 a year. Again, these are estimates. We won't know the totals exactly until the county actually provides that to us.
Can I just have you make one clarification on this too? Because I'm sure a lot of people are looking at this and saying, when we talk about a primary residence of $450,000, and people are saying our home is valued at more than that, but it's because the county, you do not get taxed on 100%.
No, you do not get taxed on 100% when you're a primary residence. However, if you're a business, you are taxed on 100%. So that's why there is the difference on that. So just because your home's valued at $450,000, you're not taxed on that full $450,000. There's the residency exemption on that. So, okay. So on the next page, the proposed property tax impact fee schedule states that the affected department would be within the police department. We've discussed, I don't think it's any front page news that the Weaver County Sheriff's Department has asked for a $128,000 increase to fund 6 new officers. As part of funding that 6 new officers, that will be the $128,000 will be a continual expense to the city. That being said, it is not advised from a financial standpoint to use fund balance to pay for that. Unfortunately, you have to come up with new money in order to pay for that increase in cost. So it is advised to do a property tax increase because fund balance can only be used so long and then it runs out. And this is going to be a year after year expense that we need to recognize that we're going to have, not just a one-time expense with this. So the hope with this is to generate the $128,000 increase from the police department. If this property tax increase does not go through, we will have to pull that from fund balance, is what the tentative budget has got included. Any questions up to that point?
Cammy, I apologize.
You're good.
I don't want to get in the weeds on the rate, but my math comes up with $60 per resident on a $450,000 home instead of $36.
I'll have to recalculate to figure out if that is incorrect. Again, these are estimates, but yeah, thank you, Ryan.
Before we vote on it, I'd like it to be fairly accurate
Okay,
before we
okay,
commit ourselves.
yeah, I can figure that out real quick.
Okay,
Um,
go ahead and then we'll come back to that.
Okay, yeah, I'll come back on that. Okay, so the capital projects fund on the next slide, we've got $526,000 worth of income. Our expenditures are $474,000. So that's the capital projects fund. Then we go to the sewer fund. The total income on that one is 2.3. The total expenditures is 3.2. Part of that is some large capital improvements that we've discussed that the sewer system needs, and we've decided which ones we want to fund this year with that. That does leave that fund in a decrease in fund balance of $894,000. Okay, on our next one, garbage, our total income is $902,000, and our expenditures are also $902,000. We're pretty close to break even on that fund. And then our sewer stormwater is $478,606. Revenue, our expenditures is 1.1. That includes a capital project of $880,000 that we have also discussed. So that is what the tentative budget in a nutshell, but you have the full beautiful one. So that is what the tentative budget has included. So as part of this, I have to say certain wording and stuff, so I'm just going to read it exactly off the agenda so that we are hopefully covered with everything, because they are become very, very picky on this. So,
You are referring to the state, right?
yes.
Uh,
Yes. So basically, I'll just read through it. The action item is a motion to adopt the tentative budget for fiscal year 26 to 27, including a proposed property tax increase. Consideration of resolution 2026-01, a resolution for the council of Hooper City acknowledging the filing of the tentative budget for fiscal year 26-27 prepared by the budget officer pursuant to section 10.6.111 of the Utah Code, adopting the tentative budget subject to further review and consideration by the council. We're establishing a date and time and place of public hearing on the tentative budget prior to the adoption of the final budget for the fiscal year 26-27, subject to the requirements of section 559 to 919 and 59 to 924 of the Utah Code, ordering publication of notices as required by law and ordering the tentative budget to be available for public inspection in the office of the Hooper City Recorder and on the city's website for at least 10 days prior to the adoption of the final budget. The budget officer intends to state that the tentative budget includes a proposed property tax increase, which I have done. Statement of the public officer that the tentative budget includes a proposed property tax rate increase. Oh, sorry, I read that one twice. The budget officer presents and makes available to the public a property tax impact schedule as a separate document from the budget documents. Consideration of Resolution 2601, a resolution of the City Council of Hooper acknowledges that a separate item is on the agenda for the public meeting on May 7th, 2026, notifying the public that the budget officer intends to state to the City Council that the tentative budget for the fiscal year 26 includes a proposed property tax increase. Acknowledging that the budget officer made a statement to the City Council on May 7th, 2026, public meeting that the tentative budget includes a proposed property tax increase. Acknowledging that the budget officer presented to the City Council as a separate item on the agenda in the same meeting as proposed property tax impact schedule from other budget documents as defined in section 59 to 924 of the Utah Code, directing that the property tax impact schedule shall be available for public inspection and will be included in a separate agenda item at each public hearing prior to June 30th, at which the City Council discusses the proposed general fund budget for the fiscal year 26 and 27. The City Council intends to make a statement that Hooper City is considering levying a tax rate that exceeds its certified tax rate, the approximate dollar amount and or public purpose for the additional ad valorem tax revenue that would be generated by the proposed tax increase, and that if the Hooper City proceeds with the property tax rate increase, Hooper City will provide notice of and conduct a public hearing at which members of the public will have an opportunity to provide comments on the proposed tax rate increases. State of the budget officer of executive of the entity of section 59 to 919 or B of the Utah Code. Consideration of Resolution 26-01, a resolution of the Hooper City Council acknowledges that a separate item is included on the agenda for the public meeting on June 4th, and I would like to also add August 6th, notifying the public that the budget officer or executive intends to make a statement as required by statement 59-219-4B of the Utah Code, acknowledging that the budget officer or executive made the statement as required by section 59-919-4 of the Utah Code, setting the date and time and place of the public hearing on the proposed property tax increase as required by section 59-219 of the Utah Code, and directing the budget officer to send notice before June 1st, 2026 to the Utah State Tax Commission and Weber County Auditor, stating that the city is considering a property tax increase and the time and date of the place of the public hearing required by section 596-219 of the Utah State Code. Sorry. Okay, so if you want to wait for a second, I'll hurry and recompute that, Ryan, and then.
Yes, that would be good.
Is it because of the residential 55% calculation? Because the businesses, the 417736 comes out correctly. But for residential homes, it seems to.
While you're figuring that, I just wanted to inform those that are here and those listening online. So Hooper has not done a truth in taxation since 2013, and we know this is something that a lot of people maybe are not as familiar with, including those of us sitting here on the rostrum. So next Wednesday, May 13th at 6 o'clock, we are going to have a town hall meeting, and we're going to have Carrie Nakamura, and she's with Carrie Nakamura and Associates, is going to come and do a presentation. She is considered an expert in the state as far as truth in taxation. I attended a seminar, well, 3 of us did, down in St. George with the Utah League of Cities and Towns, and it was excellent. And she presents it in a way that we felt like we do not have that ability. And so we hope that you'll be willing to come, tell your neighbors to come. She'll do a presentation, and then it'll certainly be open for questions as far as how the whole truth in taxation process works. And so if you put that, I'll repeat that date again. It'll be next Wednesday, May 13th at 6 o'clock here at the city offices to come and learn more about truth in taxation.
Can I just second that, Mayor? Government budgeting is totally different than what I've been used to my whole life, and as far as I'm concerned, it's messed up. But I'll just say it how it is. But this Carrie, she opened my eyes down there at this meeting and taught me an awful lot. So any of those of you who are listening from home, this would really be worth your time to listen to her and have her explain to you really how good this truth in taxation is, and that. So and then second everything that the mayor said.
Are we okay to go ahead and start discussing, Tammy, while you're
Yeah,
figuring
that's
that?
fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll turn some time then to the council and we'll be discussing.
So I just want to say a few things on this. I don't take lightly a consideration of asking our residents to reach in their pockets to pay for something. I know the percentage can seem misleading because it's 40-something% because we have a lower tax base here. But the reality is we're asking our residents to reach in their pockets and pay for something. So I kind of categorically object to that. I have a hard time with that. It's not something I support. It's not a platform I run for. I'm true to the core conservative when it comes to asking people to keep their money and not ask them for more. This being said, I've asked a lot of questions in our budget meetings about this. My first question is, are we using the Sheriff's Department enough to justify this? And in all honesty, we're not using it proportionately to what the increase would be. And the increase, I feel probably initially in my mind wouldn't justify having to spend this. I've talked to our lawyer and I fully understand that as a city, to be a city, we have to provide a police force. And the amount of money we spend with that contract couldn't substitute and support our own police force. We don't have the ability to hire our own police force, judges, host our own jail, do all the things that we have today. And unfortunately, the officers have stepped out when we talked to them during the work meeting and asked, can you kind of put in your words what this would help with? And one of the things is it would essentially raise the residents to almost 1 officer per 1,000, where right now we have about a half an officer per 1,000. It's around 0.7-something%, or 0.7 of an officer. So I do like that because we get a lot of calls from our residents asking how we're dealing with things like traffic and whatnot in the city. And it's $30-some a year, and it seems like, yeah, we could probably afford that. I just want to be on record of stating this is not something that I personally take lightly. We made it a point through these budget meetings, and I know some of them were long, to go through and look at anywhere we can take from to try to look at this. And as Cammie instructed, and talked to us through, because this is a recurring thing, this isn't really something that we can just jump into the fund balance for. Other things we did get into the fund balance for. You see those negatives on the loss or delta of the 800,000 here and there, and the way we try to keep the trash budget consistent. I do believe government should try to find out what they can do with the money they have and not ask people for more. If there was any way that we could do this, I even said, can we just tell the sheriff's department, no, we're not paying for this. Apparently we can't do that. But I did ask that question because I'm very curious, like, is it possible for us to just say no? And so, I think that, I'm surprised we don't have more residents who've attended today for the public hearing. Hopefully we have more as this comes down the pike. Just understand, we are genuinely considering every angle when it comes to the seriousness of even asking for $1 from our residents more than what we have currently. And so it's not something I take lightly. I don't think it's anything that any of my co-counsel take lightly.
I agree. And if we added up how many hours we spend, and I'm not talking about all the hours that our treasurer has spent on this, as a city council, it's been at least 10 plus hours in meetings, not as with us individually. And when it comes to a city, you really have three ways that you can end up getting more money in your city. One of them is you cut or reduce services, and like we've already said, as far as part of us being able to incorporate as a city, we have to have a police department. That isn't something that we can't do. So we went through our budget, and you saw when we went through this, and some of these were already in the negative, and we're doing from fund balance, so that will only last so long. Another thing is you have increased revenue. So that's something we probably need to look at here in Upper City. How do we get increased revenue? And the third way is to raise taxes, and I think that was all of our last option that any of us wanted to do. And Councilmember Craig is right. None of us, we didn't run and say we're going to raise the taxes. But you can only go so long trying to make your budget work when you don't have any additional money to make it work. And I was telling Councilmember Craig earlier, it's not like we look at our budget and we say, wow, we have this extra money. What do we want to do with it this year? Would we want to put in a splash pad, or could we do a walking trail around the park? We look at our budget and we say, what sewer pumps absolutely have to be replaced this year? So everything in our budget was an absolute exactness of what it did. And so I just hope all our residents understand this is something we take very seriously as a council.
We also had extensive discussions with our Public Works Director of the items that he is anticipating that we are going to have to deal with in the next few years. And the figures are staggering of the things that potentially could come, and we're just trying to work around that. We are literally potentially looking at millions of dollars in things that need to be changed, and could potentially come up and bite us on the rear and take our fund balance down very rapidly. And the one thing I do hope people understand is, if you see this thing and it says we have a 47% revenue increase, that sounds like a ton, but when you put it back to, the average home, I think, is like $125,000 out here. It's a lot less than it seems like. I know, like, we've been watching Roy, and they have a 50-some-odd% increase, and people are having a meltdown, but that will increase their budget by like $2.8 million up there, and they didn't get their tax increase they applied for last year. One thing we did learn from the trainings that we went to was it has to be exactly perfect in order for the state to allow you to do any kind of a tax increase. If it's not exact, they won't let you do it. Ironically, there were a lot of entities last year, schools and cities that didn't get the ability to increase their tax rates to cover their bills because they didn't apply correctly. And another item that came before the legislature was one that was going to restrict what a city could impose upon their residents as an increase down to 5%. That bill did not pass. Had that passed, the most that we could would have increased our taxes by the most we could have increased them per resident would have been like $10 a year, which 2,500 residents, that would have not been
would have generated us about $13,000.
Yeah, not much money, 13,000 a year. That won't even keep us up with the cost of living that we are incurring. And, you know, one budget item that isn't built in really well right now is the cost of fuel, which has gone through the roof. And I know we are all dealing with that, but we are dealing with it as a city and probably at a much higher rate than most individuals are, that on the amount of gallons, let's say, that we use. So while we don't like this, it seems like something that we necessarily need to do. I don't know how you say that specifically, but we're going to do everything we can to make this work. We have had so many discussions. We are looking at alternatives on several items, but some of these items just don't have any alternatives. So we are going to keep pursuing stuff as we can. I know Councilman Ropoletto has spent a bajillion hours going over line items in the budget, trying to find a place here and a place there where we can cut stuff, and has raised some valid questions of things that we will look into. But for this year, this is kind of where we're at. Hopefully by next year we might be able to accommodate some stuff. So anyway, I'm done.
Do you have different numbers?
So it doesn't change a whole lot, but the estimated primary residence would increase by $39.41. So currently it's approximately $83. It would go up to $122 approximately for primary, and then the business is correct.
Okay, so the 36, 38 is not correct, it's the 39.
$39.41. So we're talking a couple dollars. So.
Well, I know sometimes residents see too, and Carrie will explain this better next Wednesday, but sometimes they think, our taxes are going to go up 50%. No, only your Hooper portion. And if you've looked at your tax notice that you get, you'll see that little tiny sliver that Hooper receives. It really does only average out to be, well, if you take the whole average, about $100 to $110 a household currently. Which again, any money is any money. If we thought we had a different avenue, we would look at that.
You know, Mayor, maybe it's splitting hairs, but I think it's worth saying, at least for the record for our citizens listening or those that are here in attendance. You know, if you look at that comparatively to like what the school district gets, they get like $2 million from the city. Yeah, about 5. Yeah, and you know, the school district was presented with an option to pay for their resource officers fully, because currently they pay 70-30. And that would have offset for the city's needs to do this, but the school district opted to not do that. They said they didn't want to do it. And so it left the city staff to come up with the ability to pay for this themselves. So it's not that there are other alternatives that we've tried to figure out. I mean, we're already as a city handing them about $5 million in tax revenue from our properties, and then we're getting $200,000, you know what I mean? So it is interesting to kind of see how that system works. And that's like Larry said, there's things you learn in government budgeting. I didn't know the school district could say no, they're not going to pay for their resource officer, and we're not allowed to say no. So there's just a difference in what that looks like. So sometimes it seems like it's just kind of straightforward, but it's not. The other thing that I think is just kind of important in noting this resolution as we, you know, once we make the motion, is to move forward in the process. This doesn't lock it in. We have multiple other meetings as are listed here. The June 4th meeting, the August 6th meeting, more public hearings, more opportunities. And we do luckily live in a state. If you look up truth in taxation, it is very unique to our state, that our state has made it. It's not just easy for us to just generally say we're raising taxes on our people. And so I do love that about our state, that it makes it hard, and it should be hard, it should be difficult. We should have to hop through the hoops if we're going to ask you for more money. And there are more opportunities for folks to come and express their concerns and opinions. And I, as a council member, would like to hear the residents' opinions on this as we move forward in it as well.
Another thing that I heard through the grapevine was that some people actually couldn't figure out why we were doing this, that it would come through their property taxes assessed by the county. But I think there are people out there that don't understand that law enforcement comes directly out of our city's budget. It is not a line item on your county property taxes wildfire and things like that are in schools. Law enforcement comes directly from us, and it is not included in your line items on your taxes. And actually, if you look at your taxes, the city itself generally gets, we're like about 6th down the list. We actually get less money back from the county, from your property taxes, than the library does, which kind of gives me a headache, but it is the way the situation is set up. So we're going to do the best we can to keep it down.
And just a little bit of an explanation with that, because they will also see a sheriff line item under Weber County, but that pays for the jail. There are specific things like CSI. There are those functions that does pay for with the county. But as far as paying the officers, and I'm hoping I'm saying this correctly, but that does it. We are considered a contract city. Those cities in Weber County that do not have their own police departments, we are a contract city. And so we are paying, so Weber County out of their budget pays for so many officers, the contract cities pay for so many officers. But there still is that overhead that is passed on as well.
Okay, has everybody got a headache?
So is there any other discussion by the council? So what we need to do tonight is we need to make a motion to adopt our tentative budget for fiscal year 2026-2027, which includes a property tax increase, and then also a motion for the resolution, which is number 2601, and what the resolution is just stating, the city council is considering to level a tax rate.
So the resolution basically, in a nutshell, gives the budget, gives us the authorization to notify the county and the state and to set these public hearings as well, so that we can actually move forward with the proper means to do this. We can't just say, oh, we think there should be a property tax increase, so we're just going to do these. You have to give us permission that you feel like there's more enough detail that we're going to do this, that we should pursue this, basically. Still, you're not agreeing to the property tax increase, you're just giving us permission to pursue it. So that's your intentions.
Mayor, as a rule of order, do we need to make the motion to approve the budget separately from the resolution, or are they all done as one?
I would say let's err on the side of separate.
Yes, I
Because
agree.
it would be better to err on that side.
Yes.
And with the resolution, I would propose that we only have the public hearing of August 6th in there. We need to add the June 4th at 6 o'clock as well. So when you make that motion, we'll want to add that additional public hearing.
Okay, so I'll get us started, and I'll make a motion to adopt the tentative budget for fiscal year 2026-2027, including a proposed tax increase with the amendment of the resolution, or would that be separate?
That'll be 6.
Okay, so I'll pause there.
Okay, so the motion was made by Councilmember Craig. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
The second is made by Councilmember Rapoletto. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, we are going to do this by roll call vote. So we will start with Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Rapoletto.
Aye.
Councilmember Craig.
Aye.
Councilmember Hancock.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. So now the next motion then will be for the resolution, and that's the one that you'll need to make that addition to with that additional public hearing.
You're on a roll.
I reckon I'll do it. I'll make a motion in consideration of a resolution 26-01, resolution for the council to seek the proposed tax increase, or notify, a notice of the proposed tax
Just
increase.
adopt the resolution.
Adopt the resolution, there we go.
There we go.
With the amendment or change to the wording to include the August 6, 2026 date in addition to the June 4, 2026 date notifying the public.
Okay, the motion has been made by Councilmember Craig. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
The second is made by Councilmember Hancock. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing them, this is a resolution. We are also going to do this by roll call vote. So this time we will start with Councilmember Hancock,
Aye.
Councilmember Craig,
Aye.
Councilmember Rapoletto,
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Thank you, County. And again, we just want to make sure everyone knows, as we have stated, this doesn't mean that we are doing this. This means that we are considering this, and that just gives authorization for our budget officer to let the county and the state know. Okay, and then make sure again, I just want to remind everybody to come next Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Okay, the last thing on our agenda then is approval of oversized structures and secondary dwellings. And this is something that our Planning Commission has worked very diligently on. It's gone through a complete vetting process with our attorney. And so hopefully you've had a chance to look through this, and we can discuss this and see if you have anything that you would like to add or change with this. Malcolm, is there any sort of thing you would like to add to this or explain about this motion or this approval?
I think the memo summarizes it. If you guys want me to add any context for listeners or the audience, we can, or if you have questions, so let me know what you'd like me to do.
My one question, just maybe a matter of opinion from the planning commission. You know, one of the things that we keep hearing about in this state is potential, the governor offering preemption to take away our zoning rights because he wants affordable housing. How do you feel that the increased square footage on the ADUs is going to be able to help our discussion towards offering affordable housing options to like our children or those that we may want to, you know, bring out here and live in Hooper and make it a little more affordable for them to come out? Do you think that this helps address that issue?
I think that one of our moderate income housing strategies was, you know, DAUs has been identified by the state as a strategy that can help out. I think there's some higher level discussions there that are kind of hard, but I do think it can. We get a lot of residents that come in and their primary intention is for their children, more than even for you know, a mother-in-law, like it's traditionally been called. A mother-in-law apartment a lot of times is for their children, which I do think they're able to realize, you know, a discounted rental rate. It's a win-win for parents, and I think from those standpoints it's very helpful. I do think a couple of highlights. We're increasing ours to 1,250 square feet. That would be tied for the largest living space in the state, so I think it's pretty favorable. I think Moab does that as well, if I remember right. So I think that we're, you know, we have large lots. That's one thing that sometimes we can get a little bit of criticism for, but I think the one thing that our large lots lend themselves to are through these detached dwelling units that can provide opportunities for people to realize, you know, moderate rental rates and help them get into homes eventually. I do think it can increase the value of the homes for the people who are putting them in, and that can benefit people as well as they're looking to, you know, increase their own value.
Well, and there also is, I'm just going to read from the mandates we have, that the state law updates require detached accessory dwelling units to be principally permitted in most instances. Specific municipalities shall adopt land use regulation that permits a detached accessory dwelling unit on any lot or parcel that is 11,000 square feet or larger and contains a single-family dwelling, if a single-family dwelling is a permitted use on that lot or parcel. I think these are going to be really beneficial to us because they're obviously all going to qualify under the moderate income housing statute. If we can get people to employ them and use them in as many instances as possible, I think it can do nothing but benefit our city.
So, two concerns I have here, and the first one, talk to me about the parking. You know, I see they want either asphalt or concrete. You know, every home's going to be different in that. You know, is you know, a good road base sufficient enough, or were they pretty adamant about having concrete and or asphalt.
No, they weren't adamant. It was added kind of towards the end. I think parking would be the main consideration. You know, obviously, just want to make sure we have adequate parking, which we did update. But our prior ordinance, we didn't regulate the surface of them for the ADU. This would be a little more stringent. But I think the idea is if we're gonna have more parking, we don't want people calling others private. But that's something we could look at, gravel or road base or something like that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the runoff. I mean, if you have all concrete, all cement out there and we get a good rain, where's that water gonna end up? Because it's not gonna go into the ground. It just, you know, I'm just thinking kind of down my street where it's at, or, you know, is there good runoff for that? And that was my first one, unless somebody has something else on that. So my other question with these ADUs and what's the other one? Anyway, the different one. What's that?
Oversized.
Yeah, the oversized. In the future, what's Hooper gonna be? You know, 1 acre lots. I get it. Put an ADU on it, whatever, and that. You know, what's the overall picture gonna look like? Or would Hooper be a better place or be nicer if we went to half-acre lots than that? I'm not trying to get more homes than that in here. I know that's what it's gonna sound like, but if we start putting so many of these ADUs in, and I just don't know as an overall picture, you know, if I like it. I don't even know what the subdivision's called, but the one down by the cemetery, those are all half-acre lots, and that's one of my favorite subdivisions. Maybe it's because I drive through it so much. It's so clean. All the yards are well kept in that, and then you end up, you know, with the 1 acre lots. They're hard to take care of that. So I'm just throwing that out.
So a couple of things back to what Councilmember Hancock read. It is now state law updates that they are principally permitted, you know, according to state code. So if we have any lot that has 11, or a parcel that's 11,000 square feet or larger and contains a single family dwelling, we need to have an ordinance that permits an ADU, a DADU. And so that is something that is mandated from the state. And Hooper was above it ahead of the time because we were having DADUs, and there's been a lot of conversation with a lot of the legislative about doing this. But I agree with what you're saying. I understand what you are saying. I understand too that this is a real help if you have a child or a grandchild that maybe needs a lot. One question I had, and again this is for discussion with City Council, had to do with number 8 that said no part of the detached accessory dwelling. This is on page 7 and number 8 under H. Unit may extend beyond the center of the primary residential structure. So they used to be that they could be even with the front, then they moved them behind, then they moved them to the center. And again, we have some large lots out here that maybe they have more acreage on the side that it really doesn't. So that would be one thing I would say is I am fine. I don't think they should be in front of the house, but I wouldn't have a problem if they were even with the front of the house rather than being in the center.
Yeah, and I honestly am probably crazy. I don't care if it's in front or behind. And the reason why I say that is kind of similar to what you're saying, Councilmember Robledo, it's kind of sixes. We end up, because if I understand correctly, now you can have, essentially, if we adopt this, a detached and an attached accessory dwelling unit and your primary residence, right?
Yeah.
So we essentially have 3 residents on one property, on an acre. We're just doing 30-acre lots without doing it, right? We're just doing it in a different way without calling it what it is. And so that's kind of interesting. And it's not that I mind that, it's just, you know, I know that this kind of restricts that the owner has to live on the property and there are other things, but in my mind I'm going, you know, if it's designed well, And I'm not trying to get wild out here, but I also have seen some shipping container conversions that have been really nice. And people have done those very modern and they look really great. I'm not trying to.
It's not allowed.
Yeah, I know it's not allowed. I see that, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like if somebody is, there's very tasteful ways that people can do things, and so I think that if we're looking at kind of making this possible to prevent all the exceptions that we're having to make constantly or conditional things, we should just kind of make it with the consideration of what we really want to allow. And I would at least be willing to consider the removal of the center of the property expectation. I'm not saying we have to do shipping containers. I'm not trying to get a trailer park out here. I'm just saying there are some things that we could maybe just consider, especially in modern capabilities of modifying things.
It's amazing how quickly you are converting to a redneck.
I grew up in the deep south. I don't know if you know about me.
I also agree with you, Councilmember Rappaletta, but I don't know that we necessarily need to state it needs to be concrete or asphalt. I think it could be a hard packed surface, even gravel. I don't know that seemed a little restrictive to me.
Well, don't we run into impervious, hard surface percentage considerations when we pour concrete and asphalt on a
Yes.
half-acre lot, for example? I mean, that percentage is obviously going to skyrocket when you got a building and a bunch of concrete and asphalt. So, what point? I mean, there's no language in here that talks about calculating the impervious surface. That's it. That's one of our codes, and so that's got to be taken into consideration. So I agree as well. That we ought to consider non-impervious to satisfy that requirement. So.
How would we, Malcolm, at this point, based on that call out, how would we probably consider that to maintain the water table and the impervious, expectation we have? If you had a oversized structure, DADU, an ADU, and pretty much you got, a quarter acre of grass left if everything's in concrete. We got 3/4 of an acre of concrete.
Yeah, we have a 65% maximum impervious surface that's calculated for an accessory structure or any addition. So the Tolman calculates it, if they're beyond, then we can't proceed with violating the ordinance.
So would it be something we want to consider that would allow something other than that? Yeah, because if somebody goes, well, technically I can build this, but technically I can't because I got too much concrete. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels very counterintuitive to say we're allowing this, but now you can't allow it because you have too much. So those would be my two suggestions. And if in the packet there was our old code and the new code, and so we would need to make a motion to approve this. And this has been something that's been in the works for quite some time. And so I would like to see us get this approved tonight if council feels comfortable with maybe then making that change in number 5, that it does not require concrete or asphalt surface. And then if you're again on number 8, if it could be to the front of the primary residential. Was there anything else any of you saw?
Can I just ask about 14? It says the accessory dwelling shall be rented for 30 consecutive days or longer by the same occupant. Is that just to prevent less than 30 days rentals, or what's the purpose of that?
Is that like Airbnb?
Most codes included it's for short-term rentals to prevent them.
Like Airbnbs?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we just speak to me a little bit more about if we get rid of the hard surface in number 5, with concrete or asphalt. So adequate parking, that's defined, so we can leave that loosely, and then we have the definition. How do you want to? Do you care at all what the surface is, or do you want to?
Yeah, it probably
It be as determined by, staff or something. How do you want that?
Do we have an ordinance currently that deals with, forgive me, I don't know, that currently deals with like parking and grass? Like something that addresses that, like you gotta have gravel under a boat or anything? No? I know some cities do. So I wasn't sure if there's like a substrate requirement. I don't know whatever engineering build would require you to build it on, but as far as the parking, your gravel parking, side easement or whatever, I wouldn't be opposed to, or like you said, harbor based something.
So maybe if we just want to have the accessory dwelling shall provide adequate off-street parking space, period?
And we don't dictate what that looks like.
Yeah.
Do you see a complication of planning for that?
I mean, we just don't want to be a mud pit.
Right.
Parking, you know, drag
Yeah.
mud everywhere. But it's gotta be adequate substrate of some kind, you know. But you can't really define it. I mean, you can on a case by case, I'd say, so.
Yeah, I don't, I suppose that works if we just leave it as adequate off-street parking, the number of spaces is defined in other codes, so that'll be comparable, and then I think it would, can we use the word compacted, or?
Well, because we look at our primary residences now, we don't require all of our primary residences to have a concrete or asphalt surface. We don't, we have a lot of homes out here in Hooper that have a dirt driveway.
That's right.
So I don't know why we would want to say an accessory dwelling has to have a concrete or asphalt if we're not requiring our primary residents to have that.
Yeah, I think I would agree with just striking the with concrete or asphalt surface.
Yeah.
That's fine, we can do that.
Any questions on 8, on how we need to reword that? Because we don't think that there needs to be the requirement for 8. Can we just strike that completely?
I would just modify it, no part of the detached accessory dwelling unit may extend beyond the build line of the primary residential structure, the front build line, or the front build line.
Is that the restriction we want? We don't want it to go beyond front. Okay.
I think so, the front building.
I'm okay with that, but here's a question. What if somebody has something that's just gonna look absolutely great for the community and that it goes beyond that? Can they come in and apply for a special request on that or not?
They wouldn't be able to.
Okay.
I think just to clarify though, these would just be for detached structures. Attached could still go beyond, because they would create a new build line, attach it, and they could bring it forward, so they'd have options.
So there you go. Somebody could create an attached, increase their front build line, and then move their ADU up. They detached.
So, yeah, that's the question I had. There's a lot of people that have a little bit larger lots that build way back off the road. So we don't wanna, that's gonna be kind of a conflict if they can't build something to the front. Or if they had a wide lot that had room. I'm not quite sure how we're gonna regulate that.
Well, I'm just thinking of my house. I have one that sits way back
Yeah.
off the road, and it's on a 1 acre, and it wouldn't have sat that far back if it wouldn't have been on a 1 acre. And if I was to put one of those units in, I probably would still want it back as far as my house. So I'm not so sure that will run into a problem.
But if somebody wanted to, we're saying you can't, basically, right?
Yep.
And then get creative and tie it into your house.
There you go.
Front build line, I feel comfortable with.
I think, just not to interrupt your discussion, this is good, we'll finish it, but I just wanted to highlight as I'm thinking, I appreciate the thought, and at one point, council had recommended, or planning commission had recommended these be quite large. We worked with legal and we refined it and came back a lot smaller, living space specifically. The primary thought that me and Darren discussed is these are accessory in nature, right? This is what these are, and they're permitted, as you can see, state law wants these permitted now, and they have a different functionality. So I appreciate the zoning discussion. I just think we can do those with this thing. With it, we can create both at the same time. We just, it's just a different discussion. The zoning can come at another time, and this would be subsidiary and supportive of housing, but never the primary, right? So I understand that we thought the same when we had the living spaces really big, but why don't we just let them do another house at that point? But these are supposed to be accessory. So any zoning you guys come up with down the road, these accessory will be options for any primary dwelling. We want to make sure that they stay accessory in nature. To that end, the only other thought I'd bring up, and I'm not suggesting it, just in state law, one interesting side note, it's mandated for DADUs to now be allowed on, single family dwellings. The only caveat says you can't prohibit them for 11,000 square foot or less lots. So just something to throw out I'm not recommending that by any means, just wanted you to be clear that state law would let you prohibit them on about a quarter acre or smaller if you wanted on DADUs. IADUs are permitted always.
I don't think you want to detach one on a quarter
One additional thing too was that we talked about having them come in and do a license.
Yeah,
Would
so,
you explain that?
yeah, they have to be, they're principally permitted now, so we can't have them go through a conditional use permit process anymore. They want it to be less stringent. We still have an administrative license. The primary reason for that is, one, we have some specific ordinances we want to make sure are acknowledged via the licensing that, you know, they'll live in one of the units. So that's something that we'll monitor, but also from a reporting standpoint, it's really helpful if they have this license attached to the permit that they pull so that we can keep track of how many of these we're having. It is one of our moderate income housing plans, so this way we know how many and how effective this is and what the appetite is for them across the city. So we won't have a conditional use permit and it won't ever prevent anyone, but they will have, the license is required, just to acknowledge the ordinance and help us keep track of how many are within the city.
Can I ask one more question? 18, shall not be sold separately or subdivided from the principal dwelling unless compliant with subdivision regulations. When would an ADU ever be compliant with subdivision regulations?
I guess they could, if we allowed them to come to the build line, which we're going to, and they had 300 foot of frontage, then they wanted to subdivide it down the middle, they could effectively create two lots. Or if they drag a road down the side and it was on the rear of their building and they could yield enough frontage on the new road, then that could theoretically be subdivided.
Even if the zoning didn't allow it?
They'd have to meet the zoning still, they'd have to have a large enough lot.
Which would be tricky, right?
It'd be pretty hard. There'd be rare instances, but it is something that could occur. I think one thing is to bring up an interesting thought, by the way. Continue discussion, but Kaysville City, I believe, it was Kaysville City. They actually are now allowing them to be sold separately, which is interesting. But we're gonna let them trial run that for a year or two, and then follow up.
That'd be a trial run.
So what do you think about that?
I mean, the way I think of it is, like you said, it's probably going to be a rare occasion. It's going to be something that would have to fit the zoning. So it's probably like a rare, like an odd flag lot type situation maybe, or like a, you know, somebody would already have to be able to pull it to the frontage line and then split it off, and it would have to fit the zone. So, I mean, if we're in acre or half acre zones, it'd be hard. You'd have to split the property right in the middle. I don't know how many houses we have kind of sitting offset, and then half of that. I know it seems like a gray area we don't want to go to, but I also wonder, like, are we making a deal out of something that probably wouldn't be likely to happen?
Well, I'm just wondering if 18 even applies at all.
Yeah.
Because of all those reasons.
Right.
Frontage and zoning and on and on and on.
Well, then you've got sewer, because if I understand right, the ADU, and that's gonna go, if I'm putting one to the side of my house, it's coming into my sewer. If you subdivide that off, now they're gonna have to change all that, right?
Well, with sewer, you can have two residents in one sewer pit. So it all depends, I guess, if they ran their laterals out to the sewer pit versus coming through. I can't think of one instance though, but I had someone ask once that was on a larger lot like this, and there was actually a side road, and they'd asked about possibly doing this and for a child later on, but then they could never separate that off. And I've only ever heard of one, so again, it would have to be if they happen to be, like you said, it would have to fit with the zoning. But I don't know that we necessarily want to not allow it at the case that it could possibly, but again, it would have to be, like it says, unless compliant with subdivision regulations. So that is a pretty stringent set of rules right there that I think would eliminate just anybody coming in and doing it. So.
That's nice.
Okay, anything else with that? So if not, then what this motion would be then is to approve this, and if you want to make those changes in the wording that we had, and then we can get this, and again, we're making this motion, we're incorporating this into our code. So is there anybody that wants to do that motion? I believe we talked about number 5, changing that wording, so it just needs to provide adequate off-street parking space. Number 8, which was, no part of it may extend beyond the front build line. And I think those were only the only 2 that we had actual verbiage changes.
All right, so I make a motion to approve the oversized structure and secondary dwellings zoning with the changes to item 5, the accessory dwelling unit shall provide adequate off-street parking space, and the wording to line item 8, no part of the detached accessory dwelling unit may extend beyond the front build line of the primary residential structure, leaving the rest as proposed.
Okay, so a motion was made by Councilmember Craig. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second is made by Councilmember Hancock. Any discussion on this motion?
You know, maybe I do. Back to number 5, and I asked Councilman Hill this, could we have, would it be any good to put a compacted surface so we don't end up with a mud hole, or just leave it the way it is?
I think as Madam Mayor said, that we don't put that type of provision or restriction on even just regular driveways. So to put it here kind of seems a little out,
Okay, we'll just leave it the way it is. I'm good.
Okay, because this is a change in code then, we're going to do this by roll call vote again. This time we will start with Councilmember Rafaletto,
Aye.
Councilmember Craig,
Aye.
Councilmember Hancock,
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. We really appreciate the Planning Commission for all their work on this. I know it's taken more months than we would have liked, but it always is a slow process when you have everything reviewed by legal counsel. So the last thing on our agenda then is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, the motion was made by Councilmember Hill. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second made by Councilmember Craig. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion stands adjourned. Thank you so much for coming.
All right, let's go park.